Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update. The Albanese Labor government has edged narrowly ahead of the coalition on two-party preferred terms. The ALP's up 1% to 51%, to LNP 49%, after opposition leader Peter Dutton put nuclear energy at the centre of the coalition's policy agenda for the federal election. If a federal election were held now, the result would be a hung parliament, with the Labor Party likely to form a minority government with the support of minor parties and independents, the latest Roy Morgan survey shows. The coalition's bold announcement they'd take a policy of building nuclear power stations to the election has created a clear and essential contrast between the two major parties. The production of cost-effective and clean energy is set to be the key political issue for the next 15 years in Australia. The mix of power sources like coal, gas, renewables like wind, solar and hydro, and potentially nuclear energy are at the heart of this debate. And which energy mix is the most cost-effective and efficient in delivering cheaper energy prices and lower carbon dioxide emissions? Dutton has moved the debate from an academic conversation to a real choice that people will need to make. He's outlined plans to build nuclear power stations in 7 different electorates around Australia, including 2 in Queensland and New South Wales, and 1 each in Victoria, Western Australia and South Australia. The issues concerning building nuclear power stations will vary by state. The swing to the ALP was strongest in New South Wales, Western Australia and South Australia. There was no swing to either party in Victoria, while in Queensland there was a swing to the LNP. While it's too early to say the next election will be a referendum on nuclear energy, the signs are there. In the longer term, debates around energy production are tied to Australia's security issues via the AUKUS agreements to buy nuclear-powered submarines and nuclear medicine, the real health game changer. However, week to week, households are more worried about day-to-day problems like the cost of living that can drive political views in the short term. So primary support for the coalition was down 1% to 37% this week, while the ALP closed the gap up 2% to 31.5%. Support for the Greens was down 0.5% to 13%. Support for One Nation up 1% to 6%. Other party support was down 1.5% to 4%, and support for independents was unchanged at 8.5%. Now, the minor parties and independents will not poll this well at any election, as they don't have candidates standing in all seats. But we at Roy Morgan believe it's important to measure what we might call the protest vote against the major parties. There were gently positive results for most of the key confidence measures this week. Roy Morgan government confidence increased 2 points to 77.5, still over 20 points below the neutral level of 100, and a majority, 54.5% of Australians, still say the country's going in the wrong direction. Only 32% say the country's heading in the right direction, but there was an improvement. There was little movement in consumer confidence. ANZ, Roy Morgan Consumer Confidence this week, was unchanged at 80.4, or up 0.1, tiny bit, still well below the neutral level of 100. Now, looking longer term, consumer confidence has now spent a record 73 weeks below the level of 85. But at least now we're out of the sub-80 recessionary zone. Inflation expectations were virtually unchanged this week. Australians now expect annual inflation to be 4.8% over the next 2 years. Inflation expectations have been remarkably stable over the last 6 months and have stayed within a very narrow band of 4.8% to 5.3% for 29 weeks now. And now to the latest figures on mortgage stress, and the news is good. Roy Morgan's the only company to measure mortgage stress every month, and the latest mortgage stress figures show a decline of 46,000 people in May to 1.5 million mortgage holders, or 29.7% of all Australians with a mortgage being at risk of mortgage stress. The level of mortgage stress we're seeing now is the lowest so far this year. And the decline in mortgage stress is primarily due to rising household incomes, which, along with the extended pause in interest rate increases for the last 7 months, has reduced the financial pressure on some mortgage holders. Looking forward, there's some better news for mortgage holders to come. The Stage 3 tax cuts are due to finally hit the pockets of income earners in the next few weeks, and this will give a boost to the household incomes of millions of Australians. Almost every Australian earning a wage will have more money coming in. The rise in household incomes will obviously place a downward pressure on mortgage stress, and this is borne out by the projections for mortgage stress in July and August. In fact, even if the Reserve Bank were to raise interest rates in August to 4.6% to counter the persistent inflation, there would be 34,000 fewer Australians in mortgage stress due to those Stage 3 tax cuts. This would bring the number of Australians at risk of mortgage stress to the lowest figure for a year. All eyes will be on the next monthly inflation figure from the ABS due out later this week to give an idea about whether there will be further interest rate increases to come this year. And that's a wrap. Thanks for your interest this week in Roy Morgan's latest results, and I'll be back next week to bring you the most up-to-date readings on consumer confidence, inflation expectations, voting intentions in Australia and also New Zealand. Thanks for listening.